Welcome to the New Masculine Podcast. This is a place where masculine identifying people come together in community to disrupt outdated models of masculinity and together construct new models for our way forward as men. As a special note, while this conversation is between men, this podcast values all beings and seeks to create positive impacts for all. I'm your host, Travis Stock. I am a master life coach, an equus coach, which means I often partner with horses when supporting clients, and I'm a teacher. In my coaching work, I am passionate about the balance of masculine and feminine energies in each of us, regardless of gender. I seek to help others nurture a relationship with both types of energy, which often leads to a greater sense of wholeness. And yet what I found in my work with men is that many of us have been taught messages about what it means to be a man by first teaching us to avoid anything that is associated with the feminine. That avoidance leads to few experiences of intimacy, emotions outside of anger, vulnerability, or even a sense of belonging. Striving to comply with these models of masculinity has many of us feeling isolated, ashamed, unworthy, afraid, angry, and depressed. That's why I started this podcast, to bring men together who are ready for something new, something more whole. Welcome back to another episode of The New Masculine. My guest today is certified motivation and mindset coach, Steve Dinga. Steve's got his own journey with life's hardships to share, along with a lifetime of self-discovery work to help heal. And somewhere along the way, he stopped trying to make life what he thought it should be and found peace in the acceptance of life on life's terms. All of that personal work has evolved into a deep-seated motivation to help others navigate their paths towards becoming their best selves. He's lived this mission through his work with men in drug and alcohol treatment, as well as his current work as a life coach. In his new book, Living the Spirit of Play, he offers men a 10-step process to become more aware of the present moment and clear the path for more positive mindset that creates freedom from self-limiting beliefs. On a personal level, he identifies as a spiritual being, as a mentor, and as a gay man. So let's hear more about how he got here, the insights he's gathered from his life, and what it's like to live the spirit of play. Welcome, Steve.
Welcome, Travis. Great to be here today.
I'm so grateful that we've been able to connect, that I've been able to read through some of your book. I love the concept for all of us that some of our work doesn't have to be so in the trenches hard work. It can be more living the spirit of play. Play sounds great to me.
For me, holding life in a more playful space, it's always a good way to approach life.
It's such a beautiful invitation because life doesn't really feel that playful these days for many of us. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world.
Sure doesn't.
Is there anything I didn't mention about you that feels like good context for people to know before we jump kind of into the meat of this conversation?
I will say I'm an older man here, and being that retired from the corporate career I have, my goal is really, as you mentioned, it's a legacy for me to give back what I've learned and help others. My life coaching practice is focused in helping men, and I don't know, men have their own unique set of challenges and opportunities. So,
I appreciate
really
you.
fun.
I appreciate you calling that out, and I hope this is okay for me to say. One of the things I've talked about on the podcast is how, as a fellow gay man, how our community is often missing a lot of its elders, those people that are in that legacy period of their lives that are passing down wisdom that they've learned throughout their life. Through the AIDS epidemic, we lost a lot of people, and we lost a lot of our community sense and our elders. And so as a late 30s gay man, it's nice to connect with an elder, and I hope that's okay that I call you that since you already identified yourself as an older guy. But it's nice to have that because I think that is something we're missing as a community.
I want to add one more thing to that, Travis, and this is important. It's important in my work as well with men. Age is defined by what culture says. It's the physical age of being 70. For me, when I had my 70th birthday, I just said, I don't want to be 70. In my head, I really felt like I was 35. And at my birthday party with a lot of people there, I just said, okay, my physical age is 70, but I'm 35. And I went with that for about a week, and I said, why am I stopping at 35? Why not 17? That's when we were younger, having fun and curious about life.
Mm.
And my 71st birthday is coming up, so I'm just transposing those digits from 71 back to 17. So it really is about mindset and how you
Mm.
see yourself. And I just, I don't know, age is one descriptor, but I tend to live by what's how I'm feeling and how I'm
Uh-huh.
inspired in the moment.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that we can. That's that part of that play when we were able to really play in our lives because we hadn't been tossed around by life a little bit too much. But I hope also to invite you to share the wisdom you've gathered over your
Sure.
17 years. Wink, wink.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, great. So let's start by just talking about some of your own journey. What are some of the stories that come to mind when you think about growing up as a man in this culture, growing up as a gay man in this culture, anything that comes to mind about what it was like to be you as a little boy?
Yeah, for me to be a little boy, Travis, was living in the 50s and 60s. I was born in 1953. So it was a totally different time than it is today. I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York. And so I wasn't acquainted with big city life. Uh, Diversity for myself growing up was man and woman. It was Slovak, Polak, or Italian for the most part. And we were pretty much defined by our religions. That was diversity until I really broke out and got to college. So my experience is coming from a small town where I felt like I had to fit in a box of some kind. This is what it is to be a man. You have to be strong. I know my father was always trying to mold me into someone who could be independent, take care of my own problems. And I know he wouldn't say this directly to me, but he would probably want to say, butch it up a little bit. I was pretty effeminate growing up. And that just didn't seem to fit the norm at the time. And I realized my attraction to men early, probably around age 10 or 12. And at that time, I just felt I would never, ever let anybody know this. And I think you may or may not know this. It was still defined as a mental illness up till 1973. So my first 20 years of growing up were keeping that secret and afraid I would be found out and I would have no career. And no, it felt terrifying to me. I felt very isolated and alone and couldn't be my authentic self.
I can really connect to a lot of that same journey. I didn't grow up in the same decade. I grew up in the 80s. And so we were in like sort of the shadow period right after things were coming out of the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual that talks about being gay, homosexuality as a mental illness. And I was also growing up in the midst of the AIDS crisis. And so while I wasn't at a sexual age yet, so it wasn't impacting me at the same way, it also was sort of like teaching me how fearful I should be about being a gay person in this world. So I can really connect to a lot of those same feelings, and had similar thoughts, even though I grew up several decades later than you, that I would never tell anybody who I really was.
Right.
Yeah. So you were sharing with me that your dad really tried to instill a self-reliance piece kind of thing. And I think that there's this really beautiful aspect of masculinity, masculine energy that is self-reliant, that takes responsibility for its own actions, that is that doesn't blame others for their misfortunes or their challenges. They make a solid choice to stand firm in themselves. And I think that what I would guess probably happened, and you tell me where I'm wrong, but what I would guess probably happened is that you were also taught that to such an extreme level that it's pretty isolating. It's no longer just self-reliance. It's like you only can rely on yourself.
Pretty much so. Absolutely. Yeah. You're defined in high school or middle school by the friends you keep and not wanting anybody to know about my life. I pretty much isolated.
Mm,
And that was a really lonely feeling. And, there was always this fear of going to college, or at that time we had a draft, and it was
hmm.
being drafted and being found out that you were, and the term gay didn't even exist back then. It was just homosexual. And that seemed so um, scary to me.
Hmm. Were you ever drafted?
Oh boy. I did, at that time they had a lottery and I
Uh-huh.
was number 21. So I had to show up for my draft physical in my first semester of college and really frightening. I didn't want anybody to know that I was going to that draft physical and just felt that's the day that I was going to be found out.
Oh my
And
gosh.
no, I was ready to be drafted after that. And fortunately for me, just a couple months later, uh, at that time, President Nixon called off the draft, and I
Mm.
was, in my mind, free and saved.
Wow, that's such a lot of pressure. Like even just the idea of being drafted, potentially going to war, probably like being in violent situations,
Yeah,
having to go through all that is one whole level of pressure and scary. But then to also have it really threaten you as your safety and your identity as a human being, that's really scary too.
really is. And I don't know. For me, it was the hard way, but to break through that, I became friends with alcohol through college
Mm,
and outside of college, and I'm happy to say I have 31 years of sobriety, so I did transcend that. But
congratulations.
at that time, it felt like it was the only way to get by. Just get drunk, lose your inhibitions, and just, be yourself. And put me in a lot of hardships. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with men that were going through drug and alcohol treatment.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what did that friendship with alcohol allow for you? What did it give you that you didn't have before alcohol?
I would say courage. Uh, like I said, losing inhibition seems to be the big word for me.
Hmm.
Um, it's almost like I had to play a role. Society told me what a man was supposed to be. I didn't feel like I fit that. I felt less than. And so that I could be equal, taking a drink, two drinks, three drinks until I was in a buzz state just made me feel calmer.
Hmm.
Um, and it wasn't so formal for me where I was conscious of it all the time. I just got to be who I was, and people embraced me.
Mm.
Just other people at a bar drinking embrace other people at a bar drinking.
Yeah, a classic alcohol to alcohol drinker
Yeah,
situation. Yeah, I mean it's interesting how many men utilize alcohol as a coping strategy for this world. Like for all the pressures we feel, for all the isolation we feel, for all the fear we feel that we're not allowed to talk about, for all the emotions that we have that we don't have a sense of how to work through and navigate or share with others. It's amazing to me how many of us use alcohol as a way to allow ourselves to be more quote unquote ourselves, and yet it also distorts things like a funhouse mirror when we're really
does.
into the alcohol. So you went to college, you almost got drafted, you're drinking alcohol. What's next in your life journey? Are you out at this point? Are you
No,
what's no? Tell me what's the
no,
next.
absolutely not. Wouldn't want anybody to know that in college. For the most part, I graduated college in 1976. I took the 5-year plan because
Mm-hmm.
of my alcoholism.
Mm,
Uh, but it wasn't until 1981 when I had my first experience. I was very concerned about it, about expressing my sexuality in any way. And I had my first experience, and for me, it was really hard.
Mm,
As soon as I had that experience, I just felt all of the stigmas that everything that I thought, was frightening about being gay hit me. And it wasn't until about 6 months later that I endeavored a second time.
mm,
And then all throughout the 80s, I was living in pretty much a conservative town, Norfolk and Virginia Beach in Virginia, military town and transit tourist town. And I tried to come out there. Um, Only a few people knew my true identity. And I always wanted to guard that.
mm,
I just felt unsafe. What would they think of me? Approval seeking was really important. I was working in a corporate environment and I wanted to make sure I maintained what that image of a man should be, what masculinity should be. And it was hard. It was really challenging. And throughout the 80s, I did explore my sexuality with alcohol. But I told myself, I don't think I'm ever going to be free unless I put myself in a more liberal environment. At least find out who I am, how I can identify with that. And I made the choice to take a position in San Francisco in 1989. I put myself smack
the
dab in the
holy land
middle.
of gay men. My goodness.
Oh my gosh.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, really interesting story. If you're interested in stories, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
I
please.
was in New Orleans, my first time in New Orleans on a bank conference. I was totally just wasted. And I saw this palm reader, and his name was Otis. And I said, okay, I'm going to go see Otis and see what my future is like. And obviously, he could probably tell I was wasted, but he did read my palm and he said, I see someone with brown eyes coming into your life, and that person um, will have a great impact on you. And I can remember those words, even though and I just said, okay, Otis, whatever. Paid him, I think, my $35 and went on my way. The next day at the conference, run right into a guy. Um, my books dropped, his stuff drops. I look up, brown eyes, got a label on, says Bob from Bank of America in San Francisco. And call it synchronicity, coincidence, but through him, I got an invitation to join Bank of America and work for him, and eventually, um, had a whole corporate life and a beautiful life adapting as a gay man in San Francisco. That was in 1989.
Chills with that story.
Yeah,
I love the sort of
Otis came through.
uh-huh. I love those stories of mystery, coincidence, magic, whatever people want to call them. Like that there are things that we can't really like our minds can't wrap our heads around, or we can't really prove certain things. And for me, that's okay to leave it out of proof, to just be like, well, that's odd. And to just let that feeling state of the mystery be there. But I'm glad you shared that story. That's very cool. So you were saying that you were in the corporate world for a long time and you had this sort of protected identity during parts of your corporate world. What did you believe you needed to be as a man in order to be a successful corporate man?
uh, well, in 1989, even living in San Francisco, I did not know how to come out as a gay man.
Hmm.
I just felt I needed to be guarded. Um, if there were people in the work environment that I could relate to, I would gravitate to them. Um, the person that changed my perspective, I had an office. I was in a more senior leadership position, and the person next to me was an HR director, and he had a picture of his partner, gay partner, on his desk, and he knew I was gay, and I had nothing to show my identity. And he just said, when's your picture going to be out there? Because
Mhm.
I was with somebody at the time, my first, what I would call regular relationship or solid relationship. And it just felt so intimidating to me. And through his help and guidance, one day I put it way back on my desk back here. So it was out, but nobody could really see it. And then eventually it came front and foremost. Um, and I think once I was able to do that, I felt, especially living in San Francisco and becoming immersed in the gay culture, I felt safer. And even back then, there was a very tolerant atmosphere in working in San Francisco as
Yeah.
a gay man and with Bank of America at that time.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm reflecting on as I hear you talking is one of the sort of traditional masculine values is sort of bravery and courage. And I think that so often we as gay men get kind of left out of the masculinity thing. We get told we're not man enough, we failed as a man somehow. But in your stories, what I hear is someone conquering their fear and showing up with courage and with bravery, even in the like the most little parts of our lives, like that the world has taught you that you're not even allowed to have a picture of your spouse or your partner or your anything there, and how much courage it took to just start stepping forward into that anyways. And so it's like, in some ways, we as gay men really often exemplify the bravery and courage that's expected of men in life. And we have to do it in our day to day, every moment of our lives kind of thing.
Yeah. And the timing has to be right for you to come forth and
Mm,
be in that space as well, I found.
yeah.
And once I was in it, I was in it. Once I broke through, like I'm not looking back. This is really fun.
Uh-huh.
And it was just so beautiful because I had so many gay friends. I had friends that were in relationships that we could have dinner with. I had a lot of straight friends. It just didn't matter how you labeled yourself. It was just people getting together, and I just felt so free in the
Mm,
90s.
mm-hmm.
That started to break away.
Well, that's one of the
And
coolest parts about the coming out process for each of us as gay men is like, oftentimes in this podcast, we've talked a lot about how our culture has really lost the art of rites of passage or the marker from childhood into manhood. And so we don't have these sort of traditional ways of honoring those transitions in our lives. And yet we as gay men have these ones right in front of us, because we do have to come out, because there is a clear marker from before we came out, when we were in the closet, to when we're out of the closet, when we're living openly in our lives. And so in some ways, it's not always a beautiful story that goes along with the coming out process, but it is a rites of passage that we go through that clearly marks the transition in our lives and asks us to step out of who we were and step into something new. And I think that is something that that's one of the gifts of being gay, is that we have this thing called coming out. But every client that I talk to, gay, straight, woman, man, non-binary, trans, it doesn't matter. Everyone is coming out in their lives, coming out as their authentic selves, learning to feel safe being that who they really are in life. And I think that that's the thing that I would love to encourage all people listening to, is find those rites of passage that help mark the delineation between who you were and who you're becoming, because that, as you're saying, it really opened your life up to go through that process for yourself.
yeah, it's beautiful the way you stated that. Growing up, for me, for you, it sounds like there were social norms, cultural norms of what a man should be, um, especially if you were a gay man. And right now, I like to see it as the labels, although it helps define us, um, the labels and the box that we're in, it's just breaking away. And we're able, as you say, to be authentic and um, having the courage to be ourselves, whatever it is. I know this podcast based on masculinity, but even for me, there are things in, say, how I would define masculinity. It's totally different than it was back then.
Mm,
Back then, it was all about strength, Like my father told me, butch it up, solve your own problems, um, be strong, be competitive. Uh, there is a degree of power and bullying to be aggressive, and that can take it to its extreme. Today, if I had to define masculinity, and I try to do so without the label, I just try to live it. It's for me authenticity, being vulnerable, uh, allowing myself to be compassionate, not only with myself, but with others. And in other words, to see each other not as a label, a man, a woman, but just another person in the world that I'm engaging with, that I'm trying to, have experiences that serve my well-being and in turn help others do the same.
Mm, beautifully said. I really am stuck on that word compassion and how you delineated it for self and for other. I think that is sort of a lost art form in our current world. We're really not leaning into compassion for others'
Ah,
experiences. And I do think the way that you said that it's for both self and for others is that I think many times most of us are not very compassionate with ourselves either. And so therefore, how are we ever going to be compassionate to someone else's experience? Because we don't even know how to give that to ourselves.
yeah, the big secret is we're our worst critics.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure.
We're our worst judge.
So somewhere in the 90s you got sober. What was the turning point for you that that really that you decided you needed another rites of passage, another delineation from who you were to who you are?
Yeah, I just saw how alcohol was playing a role that just didn't serve me. I was functional. I would be able to drink all night, you know, even throw up in the morning, have a migraine, but I'd show up for work. And it's
Mm,
like, what am I doing to myself? Uh, I was doing a lot of traveling at that time, and I put a lot of investment in my healing on the spiritual side. And I just said, I want things to change. And I remember it. I remember it quite well. I was in San Antonio on a business trip, and I had a glass of wine on my birthday, well, will be 32 years ago in March. And I said, this is my last drink.
wow.
Um, Fortunately for me, and it's very hard for others to do the same, but I did it pretty much cold turkey.
Mm,
I had such, I don't know, fortitude to heal in that regard that I did whatever I could. Of course, it was, the same old struggle. The first month too, it was really tough, but got aligned with AA, attended meetings, made friends, had a sponsor, helped me through that process, and it was life changing.
mm. I think a lot of, from what I hear, a lot of guys in corporate, it's pretty much a pretty unspoken rule that you drink and you travel and you drink and you drink and you go out at nights, and like there's a corporate culture for sure around drinking, especially maybe I don't know if that's still true in sort of like how much tech the younger tech generation has taken over in some of our current businesses, but I know a lot of corporate culture revolves around drinking after work
Yeah, it did.
and while traveling. And so it's hard to break through that culture and to find your own way through. And what I love is knowing that you not only did that for yourself, but then you've spent many years supporting other men doing that in drug and alcohol treatment.
Absolutely. It was really important to me. And then, fast forward, Travis, into the 90s to up about 2012, I was just living a pretty beautiful life.
Mm,
I would be challenged by things, but I would always want to break through. I have been journaling. I used to have notebooks I would journal in from 1983 on. I think somewhere along, whenever the notepad came out, I started doing online journaling. And so I pretty much have a record of my life. And in that process, I don't know. As things would come up, things that I would need to conquer or feel like I needed to do something to be a better man, I would either do it with professional help or when internet came out, being able to Google things, to read articles, anything. I was really immersed in self-help, um, personal growth, and spirituality has always played a key role. I grew up Catholic, brother that's a Catholic and Catholic priest, and very, uh, I don't know what you would say. I was instilled with religious beliefs that I was going to hell for whatever. And I just felt that wasn't working for me, and I needed a new form of spirituality. And that's what I was able to do. I've done so much spiritual work and healing, and really bettered myself as a man. And I shared with you earlier in 2013, I pretty much was forced to retire from the corporate world. I had an experience in trauma, and where I was it was just the perfect storm for me. It was a very tumultuous relationship, one that I was very fearful of my partner at that time. And uh, it was something that I couldn't handle on my own. I just felt very threatened in just day to day life. I I allowed myself to spend time in a treatment center for trauma for over 3 months, 4 months. And it took me about a total of 15 months to break through that process. Therapist, crisis therapy, uh, addressing fear head on, learning the tools that could help me uh, get from one side of just being so fearful I couldn't even be engaged with life to at least being grounded in the first few years. And in the latter years, doing all the work, I was just so committed to the work. I
Mm,
wanted to do anything I could do to heal. So a lot of either spiritual classes, journaling, um, following the guidance of therapists. I just learned a lot, and very, very happy to say um, I'm on the other side of that.
mm,
Um, Back to a state where I'm really joyful again. And the whole learning experience of going through trauma is a gift. A lot of people wouldn't see it that way. And in getting to the other side, I wanted to take everything that I learned in that trauma space and what I did in healing to put it together in some way that I could in turn help others. And I wanted to focus on men. At first, I started with men in trauma, and then I just broadened it. I got my life coaching certification 3 years ago. I was fortunate enough to work in a drug and alcohol treatment center before that for 3 years, where I led men's groups and worked with men and just felt that calling. And right now, I'm supposed to be retired, where I'm supposed to be what I call living the spirit to play. And we'll get to that in a second, where I'm supposed to be having fun. But I do find having fun is having clients, having men that I can meet with, that I know that I can maybe instill a little wisdom, but help them find their own path
mm,
through coaching. And I just find that so rewarding.
mm.
So, through life coaching and my book that I've written, uh, it's all about giving back. And right now, because we started this conversation, remember I'm going to be 71, but I'm really 17. I'm writing my next book, which is called "It's Never Too Late to Be a Kid Again,"
Oh
and
my
it's all about the
gosh.
mindset. Whatever age you are, you can always hold on to that mindset of fun and play and holding life a little less seriously.
Oh, I love that you're an example. I think that some men worry that if they like lean into play, that nothing will get done. You seem to be someone who's getting stuff done still. You're working on your third
Yeah,
book, even though you're in the spirit of play.
it's fun.
That's amazing. So let's talk about the book. Let's talk about living the spirit to play. I got a chance to read it, and what I want to say up front is what an easy read it is. You utilize your own stories and sharing some more details about what you've been through to illuminate some of the topics, but it's not heavy. It's not deep in the darkness. And I think that there oftentimes like what a memoir can look like, where it's a lot of grotesque storytelling that draws the reader in. It has you in it, but it's light, and it's also really it's about illuminating the topics, and then it's also about giving us steps and processes for what we might want to do in order to live the spirit of play and become our best selves. So that's what I want to say as a reader, just up front. But what would you like to share about the book?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Travis. Yeah, that was my goal. It was to take, I had been reading so many self-help books, and there are so many different opinions and things. And I wanted to look at what were some of the commonalities. What were things that men were really, men and women, doesn't matter who you are, gender-based. It's what do all people living on this earth want and have in common? And for me, it's 7 attributes. And it all came down to men, since I'm focusing on men experiencing more peace, love, joy, happiness, gratitude, childlike innocence, which I put in parentheses, having fun, and being of service to others. Those are the 7 main attributes. I've got a couple others, which include things like connectivity with others, but those 7 core attributes were what I thought I could write a book about. And what I tried to use was a formula. I would start each chapter out pretty much giving a brief couple pages of getting to know me, let's just say that, about myself growing up. And then, for example, under peace, I'm looking at my book right now. I've got peace, and then I explain what peace means, and then I get into how can men gain more control over their emotions. Our emotions, obviously, our thoughts, feelings play into our emotions, which greatly affect our peace.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the things that we need to do in that area? And then each section has a quiz. Okay, where are you at? You say you're peaceful, prove it. So take this little quiz. Usually there's like 10 questions. You self-grade yourself and you say, hey, I got a lot of peace, or, oh boy, I'm missing the boat. I thought I was peaceful, but I'm not. In my life coaching, I find a lot of men who just come right out and say, I'm not at peace at all with myself. And then the formula continues with how men can cultivate more peace of mind. And that's pretty much the formula for each. And I try to end it with a quote. And I say, it's never too late to reinforce your emotional foundation grounded in peace. And then I always leave a question. What can you do to have more peace in your life? So each of those chapters play into that. But I think having the mindset of what can I do before, like in my life coaching business, Travis, men will come to me and they'll say, I want to do this, 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 and this. I want to have my own business. I want to do that. I want a better relationship with my wife or my spouse, my husband. And for me, yeah, we'll get there. But first, it's all about the mindset. How grounded are you? How peaceful are you? How are you expressing your emotions? How are you being authentic and vulnerable? To me, that's really the most important part. Once you understand that and know that foundation and how that's built, then you can move on to some of these other things. And I think that's where some men miss the mark. We're quick to jump into the solution. I want this and I want it tomorrow.
Yeah, we're so achievement oriented, and we're so connected to the doing aspect of being a human, but we're not really connected to the being aspect. And it so aligns with what I talk to my clients about when I'm first doing an intro call with them, which is that there are going to be things that you want to achieve in this life. The right job, the right amount of money, anything that you want to achieve. Those, yes, that's part of being a human. But my goal is to help pull some of that back and actually get you in right relationship with yourself first, and then see what you create from there. because so many of us are creating from such unaligned, unpeaceful, lacking love, lacking joy. We're just creating because we're part of a capitalistic sort of culture that says producing something is our value. And yet, what would happen if you actually knew your value and then created from there? That's what I think. I agree with you. That's where it starts.
And I love the word value. I think men looking at their values, I guess they're the framework and guidelines for how they want to live their life. I always feel integrity, authenticity, compassion are key components to that.
Yeah. So I would encourage anybody that's listening right now just to check in with those 7 main areas of life and see, how are you feeling about that? How much peace are you feeling? How much love are you feeling? How much joy are you feeling? How much happiness are you feeling? How much gratitude do you feel? How much childlike innocence or fun are you feeling? And how much are you able to be of service to others? Because I think that those are they're so potent when it comes to thinking about, especially a lot of conversations right now around men and men's mental health, is the epidemic of mental health crisis and suicide that's going on with men right now. And I would guess that you would be pretty lacking in all of those areas in order to get to that place where you're in crisis like that. And I think that those can be the antidote, part of the antidote. That doesn't mean that therapy is not important and maybe medication support's not helpful and making adjustments in our lives, but those are some of the categories of our lives that are often missing for us as men. And I love in the book how you offer suggestions for how might you move towards more peace, or how might you move towards more love or more connectivity to others. Like, you do offer that, because I think it's one thing to just take the quiz and go, oh crap, I'm not really at peace at all. But then what do I do next? And so I love that you as the author become a brainstorming partner for the reader, helping them kind of connect to some options.
Yeah, and I think that's important to at least put some options out there, but it's really up to the individual to do that reflection on their own and find out what really works for them. It's an individual journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. As coaches, I would imagine you feel this way sometimes too, but we want to just give a prescription for our clients to go do this and it'll fix it. And anytime I've ever tried that, it does not work. It is not, if it doesn't come from inside, if it's not a choice you're making, it's not going to work. I can tell you what worked for someone else, but it's not going to work for you unless you're into it, unless you're inspired by it, unless it comes from a genuine place inside of you.
I love that. I got clients that tell me, it's like, nope, not going there, not doing that. It's like, okay, find the path that works for you.
Have you ever suggested journaling to a man and had a man go, I don't do that?
Absolutely.
Journaling might work for you, but no thanks. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and I can just invite readers, because I know journaling always comes up, and I think we always think of it in senses of in a sense of prose. We have to write paragraphs. We got to write our experience, what happened today, and how I was feeling. For me, it's different. In my journal, I have 7 categories, and one of them is gratitude. Another one is in the area of surrender. What do I need to surrender today? And they're one-liners. It's something that I've gone through my day and I said, you know what? I really got impatient with traffic today. I really need to be more mindful when I'm driving and allow traffic to be without it upsetting me. And then I can get into things like just one-liners. What decision do I need to make today? And I have this connection. I told you I'm very spiritual, but not necessarily religion, but I have a connection with how I define God. And in my own way, I have a conversation with God. And it's usually a 1 or 2 liner. It's just, hey, I'm having a tough day. Can you at least be there for me if I'm needing some solace or comfort? Something like as simple as that. And then I just allow myself one little tab that is a journal if I want to just write out some things. I think it's great to take the journey for me spiritually is to take what's in the head and bring it to the heart space. and then to be able to ground that. And
Mm.
I'm able to do that through journaling and writing. And I know men have other ways that they can get to the same end. But for me, that works.
Yeah. Yeah, for some guys it's getting in the body in some ways, moving the physical body and letting and feeling what's actually going on in there. So many times we're living from the neck up and not really aware of what we're storing in our body. For other guys it might be talking with a friend. For some guys it might be attending a men's group. There's lots of different ways to do this work, and I think it's just about finding your own. I think I heard in there, it really aligns with what I wrote read in the beginning in the intro about you around like you've at some point you've found peace in accepting life on life's terms. That surrender thing you write about in your journal
Yeah,
is such an important part that we are not good at as men. Surrender. We are
yeah.
actually taught from very little on never to surrender, and that surrender is weakness, and that threatens our manhood. And so
Thanks.
a practice of actually going, what am I willing to, or what can I, or what should I surrender? And, traffic is traffic, life on life's terms, not on the terms we think it should be.
Yeah, and just to make that a little more positive, you can always just play with semantics and change that word surrender to acceptance.
Hmm.
I'm accepting life as it is. Just like I said, traffic's traffic. Okay. It's going to go its own way. It's up to me to just release the resistance I have to that.
Hmm. And
Sounds easy to do,
I know, I
doesn't
was
it?
just going
But
to say,
it's so
what do
hard
you
to
say to a
do.
male client that's saying, well, I don't want to accept that. That's bullshit. I don't want to accept it. What do you do in that moment? Because it is harder than just saying, just what we're saying.
Yeah, a lot of my coaching is based right around that. How do you take a perspective that we have and turn it into something that is it can be seen more positively, looking at the same situation. And one way you can look at it, if you really take the time, is, hey, the delay in traffic is allowing me to slow down. It's
Mm.
a reminder of me to slow down during my day. When I get to a stoplight in Palm Springs here, if I go through two light cycles, that's rush hour traffic to me.
I was going to say,
I,
you're complaining about
I don't
traffic in,
like
in
it.
Palm Springs.
I don't like it. So if I have to wait there and just waiting for a light, maybe for two cycles, is a chance for me to just say, okay, slow down. And it almost puts me in a quiet space and meditative. So I can look at the same situation and say, this is a gift. It's just a reminder to slow down. Or I can resist it and get pretty angry. And I'm glad people can't hear the words that I say sometimes when I'm passing them by.
Well, it reminds me of it's like the beautiful side of what your dad taught you around self-reliance, where you solve your own problems. You don't blame the outer world for making you angry or making you feel annoyed or making you feel frustrated. You don't blame traffic for being traffic. You take self-responsibility and you go, oh, this is my opportunity to slow down. I'm in control of me. I can manage myself. I can regulate myself. I don't have to blow up. I can breathe.
Yeah, I know we only have a few minutes, but I was wondering if I could come back to a topic here
Please.
around masculinity.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to speak from my own experience here. I think I've shared over the last, say, 10, 20 years, I'm very comfortable in my sexuality. I'm out and I'm open. Uh, I say that with a caveat. The political environment we have right now, um, feels for me at times to be unsafe, even in an environment like Palm Springs, which is predominantly gay. 60% of residents of Palm Springs are gay and bisexual, trans. It's just a very accepting and open community. But even with that said, uh, for the first time, I felt I have to take a step back and I look at that safety and do I have to be guarded in certain conversations? I'm all about authenticity, but if I feel like I'm in a place where the gays are not accepted, I want to make sure that I'm just not out and almost challenging someone to confront me in some way. So I say that where I think it's up to each person to understand how they feel safe, how they want to uh, be open today. I think the good thing is all the labels are coming down. It's becoming more socially accepted, but there are parts of this country where it's not accepted. And unfortunately, there's parts, I'm on men's groups calls. I'm part of two men's groups, everyman.com and womensgroup.com, and great forums for men to come together. And I know that I'm part of the gay group, and there's a couple guys that were talking that it's illegal. You can be imprisoned in their country for even being gay. Um, so, I look at it that we're going through a really defining time here where I hope the barriers are coming down, but I think each person has to navigate it in a way that they feel safe um, in the way they want to express their sexuality and call it their masculinity as well.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. I appreciate the vulnerability in that, of recognizing that there are limitations to sort of a positive mindset, that when our safety is involved, we can't just think positive thoughts and hope for the best, that there's some realities to living in the human experience, and there's some realities living in our culture during certain times where our identities are a threat and are threatened, and our rights and our safety is being taken away. And so I appreciate the vulnerable sharing around that, because there's a reality to that. And I really appreciate the encouragement for people to trust their own sense of safety. I don't think it's our job to tell people, well, you should just feel safe, or you should just feel better about it, or, oh, you live in Palm Springs and so you shouldn't worry about that. That's not reality. That we do live with fear, and we do live with concerns. I live in Seattle, a pretty liberal, accepting area, and my partner and I have considered where would we want to live next if it wasn't Seattle, and we find limited options because of the freedom that we have as a same-sex couple here, where we would feel free and safe to be ourselves. It would feel like such a loss to move somewhere else and to lose that. And so I think I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that our journey as men, as gay men, is just as valid and important to learn from, and to recognize where our own self-responsibility is around our safety and our comfort, right, and the vulnerability of that we can't just think our way through that and make the world a rose-colored glasses kind of situation.
I'll be happy to show you and your partner around Palm Springs if you're ever looking for other places. It's my little pitch for Palm Springs. You're 2 hours away from San Diego, 2 hours away from Laguna Beach, and 2 hours away from Los Angeles. So you've got big city culture just a couple hours away, but you've got the serenity and the peace of the desert life as well.
Well, we just had our first visit last September, and I grew up in the deserts of Arizona, so I acclimated very well to the warmth and the dryness. Well, it's been so wonderful to talk to you. I really appreciate you being willing to share your stories and more about yourself, the book that you've written, the sort of wisdom that you're passing down from your lived experience, but also your vulnerability as a man who sometimes also feels scared in this world. And I just really appreciate you being willing to show up.
Here's my book, Living the Spirit to Play.
I've got it next to me too. It's right here.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon. My website is spirittoplay.com. And if I could just leave with one piece of guidance, it doesn't matter whether you're 70 years old, 40 years old, or 10 years old. Life is fragile. Live it to the best that you can. Get as much out of it as you can in the spirit of fun, play, and being connected with others and serving others. And you never know what's going to happen. I could be here. I could have the next 20 years of just quality life, or I could be gone tomorrow, and you just have to embrace each day. So have fun and put a smile on your face and get lots of hugs.
Oh, lots of hugs. Yes, yes, yes. Well, thanks for being so great at wrapping that up. You checked every box that I had ready to close this conversation with. So thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Make sure, did you say your website where people can find you?
Sure, it's spirittoplay.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me, Steve. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and to gain some wisdom from you. If people want to get in contact with me, you can go to my website at travisstock.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Travers03. That's where a lot of the ongoing conversations are after episodes are dropped. So please find me there. And if you're interested in becoming a supporter of the mission of The New Masculine, I'm on Patreon. That's on patreon.com/The New Masculine. Thanks again, Steve, for joining me. And until our next episode.